Okay. Okay. So in many ways, making beer in college actually led me to my career down the road. So I went through a phase of making really bad beer. Usually that means that your beer gets contaminated with some microorganism you don't want. So I signed up for my first microbiology course in college, and I basically made my semester project isolating all those organisms that were growing in my bad beer. And that's where I realized I had a real kind of love for microbiology and science and things of that sort. So my kind of career from that point on, I became an infectious disease microbiologist over time, and ultimately became a professor at the University of Virginia in their medical school for infectious diseases. During that whole kind of time period, I made more and more beer. I won a few amateur beer awards. But being a person that's always looking to learn something new, I began branching out a little bit too. My brother actually became a winemaker in California, and ultimately he went off on his own and started his own wineries, and I became involved in that. I'm both an investor, and I worked harvest in 2007 at the wineries and set up a lot of their laboratory at the winery. And in some ways, I was their acting enologist. So I had a foot in the wine industry too. And being a person that's always looking to learn something new, after making beer, after making wine, the next logical step is actually distillation. Because you have to be able to make good beer, you have to be able to make good wine, if you want to make, in those cases, whiskey or brandy. So I started messing around with distillation and things of that sort. And ultimately realized it was something I really enjoyed. It was a pretty good balance of kind of microbiology that I liked a lot, and then balance that with the fact that I'm making an alcohol that makes me happy. It's a physical thing that I can share with friends and plunk it down in front of them and show them like the fruits of my hard labor. And that was something that was kind of lacking when I was an infectious disease microbiologist and a professor. A lot of what we were judged on was abstract. It was publications, things of that sort, but this was, distillation gave me a hard product to be proud of.
How did you select what spirits you
Yeah.
wanted to?
So there's a number of different things that went into that. So we mainly focus on rum, although I do gin and liqueurs as well. One simple fact is simply that I like rum. I mean, I don't know if it was just simply that I associated it with fun beach vacations in the Caribbean or Central America or whatever, but I like rum a lot. And I think it's one of those spirits that at this point is underappreciated. So it's kind of something that I kind of enjoy exploring because it's a little bit esoteric and like less well known. So there's a little bit of allure there too. The other thing is that from a business point of view, when I looked around and saw at least what was being made in Virginia, a vast majority of what's being produced in Virginia at the craft level is whiskey. Bourbon, whiskey, perhaps a little bit of vodka in there too. All those things are grain-based spirits. And there wasn't, I think this is fair to say, at the time that I was looking to start Vitae Spirits, there wasn't any place that was truly focusing on making rum. A couple places made rum, but it was really kind of side project-y for them. So I thought I saw a business niche too that needed to be filled. And so that's why I decided rum made a lot of sense for us. And even since making that decision, when I go into restaurants and things like that, there's been many occasions where bar managers or chefs are like, God damn, we're waiting for someone to start making some good rum in Virginia. And at least to some degree, that kind of substantiates the rationale that led me to focusing on rum in Virginia.
How did the process go from that point on when you made the decision to become a distiller to where you are today?
Before you answer that.
Sure. So becoming a legitimate distiller is a long road. There are legal things to consider. There are kind of physical things to consider. I would say the very first thing I did was simply making a plan. I mean, I built a business plan, crunched numbers, made sure everything added up and that it could actually be a viable business. In all honesty, in the early days in Virginia, it was unclear that I could start a viable business. Luckily, while I was going through this process, there were statutory legal changes that basically would allow me to have a tasting room. And that was a total change in based my business plan. And actually made a lot more sense at that point to build the distillery here in Charlottesville, where I was already living and had a home and was part of a community. I was this close to opening the distillery in South Boston, Massachusetts, because that's kind of the area that I grew up in. But in hindsight, I'm very glad I didn't open there. I mean, just my rent there was $9,000 a month. So just the overhead of being in a city like Boston would have been a massive challenge. Whereas here in Charlottesville City was very enthusiastic to have us build here. I found a building in manufacturing zoning, which was really important, and I got really lucky finding that building. So you have to find a location. As you find your location, you then start working through all the paperwork. You have to get permission from the federal government first. You have to kind of convince them that you are a legitimate business, that you have a place. You have to give them blueprints. You have to give them plans. And once you convince the federal government to give you your license, that's what you then take to the state, the Virginia ABC, and start working with them in terms of convincing them that you have everything in place to responsibly make alcohol in the distillation process and everything. So for me, I started the planning process basically as a full-time job January 1st, 2014. That's when I resigned from my professorship. And then I worked from home. I found this building in Charlottesville in about June 2014. We closed on this building in November 2014. It was a school at that point. And it took us about a year to convert the school into a distillery. So I then started up the still, November 2015, almost a year after we started doing the refurbishment. Our first product hit the ABC in 2016. Early 2017 is when our tasting room came online, and we've basically been rolling ever since.
Like how much are you?
Yeah, so that's what I would say, and this is a rough estimate. I'd say in total, we probably send about 1,000 cases per year to the ABC. And that's our whole array of, we have 6 mainline products. So we have a white rum, which we call our platinum rum, which is very simple, just fermented sugarcane juice that we distill. Our second rum is our golden rum, and that's the grilled sugarcane rum that we make in collaboration with Ace Biscuit Barbecue next door to us, where we grill fresh sugarcane, and that smoky caramelization is what we infuse into the rum to give it extra flavor and color and everything like that. We also make a gin. We call it modern gin because unlike a classic London dry gin, it's not juniper berry centric. Has 17 other herbs and spices on top of that, ranging from lavender to lemongrass to ginger to mint, eucalyptus, cilantro, a bunch of things in there. And then we make 3 different liqueurs too. A liqueur is basically a slightly sugared, alcohol. We put in the minimum amount of sugar that the government allows me to put in there. So it's 2.5% sugar, which means it's sweet but not crazy syrupy. And all of our liqueurs are also at 80 proof, so they're pretty alcoholic as far as liqueurs go. And we make an orange liqueur, which is partly made with oranges I collect semi-wild around Charlottesville, the hardy orange. That's our bitter orange that we balance that off with sweet navel oranges. We also make a cold brew coffee liqueur, which is a collaboration with Mudhouse Coffee Roasters here in town. I worked for a couple months with them, getting both the blend and the roast down for that coffee, and then we cold brew it, and which means it kind of has like a much more kind of chocolatey cinnamon aromas rather than the bitter espressos. And then we also make an anisette. An anisette is kind of a anise flavored liqueur. Some people say black licorice flavor. And you might have heard of ouzo or pastis, things of that sort. I fell in love with that type of liqueur when I was living in France for 4 years. So considering it's something I love, I wanted to make some of that. And it's also pretty frequently used in cocktails and stuff too. So that's kind of our lineup. And during a year, we sell about 1,000 cases of that to the ABC. The golden rum is our best seller. Gin is sometimes, but gin is much more seasonal. We sell a lot more gin in the summertime, so that's more up and down, whereas our golden rums are rock steady sales to the ABC.
You mentioned you work with Ace
Yeah.
For the grilling and sugar cane. Do you work with any other local craftspeople?
Yeah, so Ace is one of them. I mentioned Mudhouse Coffee Roasters. They are just down the street from us. We also do one of our distillery-only liquors, and that is a collaboration with Champion Brewery, where the one that we released is actually a distillation of their Violator Double Bock beer. So we basically take their beer straight up, we pop cans, and we fill up our still. So that batch was actually 400 cases worth of cans, so we spent a couple days popping cans and putting them into the still. But that was collaboration number one. We've actually produced collaboration number two, and that was actually a distillation of their Pils Are Alive is the name of their beer. It's a Pilsner, but it has a little bit more hoppiness to it than a classic kind of like Bavarian or Czech Pilsner or whatever. But that's sitting in barrel right now, so that actually hasn't been released so far. We also collaborate with other type of artisans. We collaborate both with Gerhardt's Chocolate and Cocoa and Spice. They make chocolate bonbons. So we have like a Dark and Stormy bonbon, which is a ginger and rum bonbon made by Cocoa and Spice. Tim Gerhardt at Gerhardt's Chocolate made a coffee pine nut caramel bonbon with our coffee liqueur. So those are just a few of the things that we collaborate with other people on around Charlottesville.
Tell me about your labels.
Sure. That's a big old collaboration too. So incidentally, our labels are actually award winners. We've won design awards and stuff like that.
When you answer, just try to reiterate the question or
Okay.
phrase it so that our labels are something that we
Okay, have it within it. Sure. Yeah. So regarding our labels, I'm very proud of those. Those are extensive collaborations also. And it actually won a couple of awards, design awards, because I think they're pretty and effective. So we did work with a local design company. Their name is Convoy. But the truth is, it was a collaboration between a bunch of different groups. So all of our labels were designed by Convoy, but each of those labels also has hand-drawn botanical art on it. And we worked with a local botanical artist superstar named Lara Gastinger. She actually just won the Royal Horticultural Society's highest prize in London. She was flown to London and everything like that. It's kind of like the Nobel of botanical art. I think she has like 80,000 followers now on Instagram or something like that. And she does fantastic botanical art drawings. They're such fine detail. We blew up some on our walls. They're really pretty. So she basically did all those hand-done drawings for our labels. And then I like to say that my life partner and business partner, Zuzana, is very much involved in the business too. And she's a landscape architect, so she has an eye for design. So I like to call her Vitae Spirit's Chief Aesthetics Officer. So she made a lot of the executive decisions about the labels. Really from my level, I'm like, how much does it cost? Is it gonna break? Then I don't care. But all these other people have the eye for design, and really they take most of the credit for the whole package and how it came